Well, let's begin then with what you call the truth aspect. So, what are the biggest lies about COVID-19?
Number the, the live dissimulations about the fact that this is not a plague, that the COVID virus is not a plague, that the infection fatality ratio is essentially identical to that of seasonal flus, period. That is the ground truth. That is the truth that has been obfuscated in 100 ways, and a truth which, if it is reiterated, if it is clarified, dispels all of this nonsense, all of these horrors that have been inflicted on society, all of the subjection to which free people have been subjected.
So, two immediate responses, because I always, in my brain, I say, what would a leftist say? And it helps me formulate my own positions. So, number one, why was it worldwide except Sweden? Is every country run by, in effect, the gullible or the left? And secondly,
essentially,
okay, I'll do the
yes.
second one afterwards. Go ahead.
Essentially, yes. Not that the Swedes are not leftists; they are, but they're not entirely gullible. Look, regardless of how you cut it, regardless of what else you might say, the fundamental, imprescindible fact is that the fatality, the infection fatality ratio of this virus is simply not very high. As a matter of fact, even though it has some peculiarities, namely somewhat unusual, and only somewhat really, unusual lethality for the old, overall it is generally somewhat milder than ordinary flus. Now, problem started with the dissimulations by the Chinese government at first. They, I don't know, we cannot know whether this was intentional or not, but they first gave the impression that this was nothing. Then they gave the impression that this was doomsday. And the rest of the world, because of the unwarranted reputation of the World Health Organization and of the U.S. CDC, caught on to that. And throughout the Western world, it happened to fit a mindset. Look at what has happened because of it, especially in the Western world, especially in the countries where the ruling class was under political siege. All of that, all of the movements that had been besieging the ruling class have been set back, quieted, pushed aside, et cetera, enormously convenient, comrade.
Right. But how do you then explain Israel and India? They're not run by the left. Why did they lock down?
Look, the the medical establishment is generally worldwide. They follow one another.
Right. So
what is the look? Go back to the fundamental point. Is anybody saying and defending the proposition that the infection fatality ratio of the COVID-19 virus is anywhere above 1%? Is anybody saying that? No one is. Not in India, not in Mauritania, not even in Washington, D.C. Will anyone stand up and say, here are the facts that show that this is really a plague? Nobody is saying that.
Right. So that leads me to
true.
the second question. They will say, the only reason it wasn't plague-like was we had a shutdown.
No. The degree, what you do to keep it from spreading is irrelevant. It's apples and locomotives to the question: what is the infection fatality ratio? What happens to anyone, whether because they have
I see. So not of population, but of infected.
Of infected,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore, and this is the other this is really the effective tool of obfuscation. What is the meaning of the word case? What is a case? Well, we just saw most recently evidence of one more of many of the manipulations of this word. The CDC has inflated the tests that show that someone is infected to tests showing that a person had been infected, and inflated those into new cases. Furthermore, they have reported as cases every test of every person, including many multiple tests of individual persons. The number of cases gets inflated. Now, that's now. Dial back to several months ago. The word case was used in an entirely different manner. It was used to denote someone who was seriously ill of the COVID. Why was that? Well, that was so that you could take the number of very sick people and then compare it to the number of deaths. That tended to give a somewhat frightening infection fatality rate. Now that they're using
That's
the word
fascinating.
case all by itself,
Uh-huh.
they're divorcing that from the fatality.
Right.
From the
This is in order to
ratio.
scare us with the absolute number of people who test positive.
Exactly. So you have first they scare you with A, then they change the meaning of A into B.
Right. All right. We'll come back in a moment. His book. It's a long read, but it's not a book. His article is up at DennisPrager.com.